Good morning, all. So I invite you for this class on DC, the module 5. I will be starting now, right? So in the module 5, you'll be studying the Ethernet and then different types of Ethernets and then their protocols. All those you'll be studying. So I'll be starting with the Ethernet, right? So what is Ethernet? Ethernet is a technology that was invented to support the LAN connectivity, right? The wired LAN connector. It acts as a connector because it is a WiSI reference, a standard to the WiSI reference. Whenever to the LAN, your systems are to be connected, right? So different persons tries to connect with the different connectors. Then that will put a burden on the network, right? It has to adjust to the different type of connectors and the protocols. That's why the Ethernet was introduced, right? And it was developed by Xerox corporations with the help of Palo Alto, right? It is based in California. And this standard now defines the connectivity. But after defining the connectivity, it provides the protocol that controls the process on how the data is to be transmitted, right? Transmitted and indicates how the network devices has to communicate. And then one of the standard the Ethernet specifies, because Ethernet provides the physical layer protocols. When it is now providing the connectivity and the topology of connectivity, you have seen the standards that is now introduced is we will have the token ring, token bus, and so on, right? The mesh topologies, so many topologies have been introduced over here. When those topologies have been introduced, then the MAC layer should support them, right? So how the MAC layer will support? The MAC layer has to support. That's why what they did is, so far we used to discuss with you only the data link layer as a single layer, right? But since the Ethernet but when these different protocols are being now sent to the upper layer, the problem comes into picture, right? Each one cannot send their packets, frames directly to the upper layer. So to avoid that particular problem, the logical link control protocol is introduced here. What it does is it provides a multiplexing, right? It brings them to the common format and send it to the network layer. So network layer job will be easier, right? So let us come to that, how to go through that each and every sub layers here. So the first, let us come to the data link control. And mainly this data link control is, you remember always, the LLC, right? The LLC protocol, it is acts as a multiplexer, right? To the different Ethernet protocols available in the physical layer, right? So you remember that it is providing a service to the different Ethernet protocols in the physical layer and acts as a multiplexer to route the frames to the upper layer, right? And the main functions of the link, the logical link control layer, sublayer's job is the flow control, error control, and framing, part of framing, right? It adds some fields to the frames. That's what is part of the frame. It will never provides the framing architecture. It adds some fields to the frames, right? So that the upper layers will understand. And similarly, when the data packets come from the upper layer, from network layer to the physical layer, it adds a framing part field to the framing part and send it to the layers below that, the Ethernets, right? So when it is doing the framing in LLC is called as the PDU, Protocol Data Unit, right? It is almost similar to your HDLC, what you studied. And then, as usual, the header contains the control fields like the one in HDLC, and the two other header fields defined in the upper layer protocol at the source and destination. So what are the fields that is in the header of this PDU is, it defines the upper layer protocols at the source and destination that uses the LCC, right? And those fields are called as DSAP and SSAP. DSAP in the sense destination service access point, and SSAP is the source service access point. So these two fields will be introduced by the LLC layer, right, to indicate the source and the destination, right, LLCs. And then here you see that how it works, right? So the, you know that allowing that it also adds what is called as FCS, right? That is the frame check sequence, and the frame check sequence contains the CRC32 error detection sequence. No, these are the sequence introduced by the LLC to see that this particular frame is correctly understood by the upper layer. That means it is especially used for the error control. If any error goes wrong, and then this FAC helps to identify the errors, and sometimes it also helpful in correction of the errors. So that's what is the code that is used here is CRC. CRC expansion is cyclic and why it is required? Like as I told you, the LLC is mainly required for the flow and the error control, right? Since it is adding what is called as FCS into the frame, it will be basically called as the one that provides the error control, right? So, and the flow control, it also takes a job of the flow control. That means it understands that what is how that receiver, because now it decides about what is called as DSAP and SSAP, the destination hop address. It comes to know that whether the packets are being dropped by the receiver or the receiver is slow enough that it understands. So what it does is it will inform the upper layers, right? Because that is nearer to the network layer and the upper layers, it will inform the upper layers so that the source may slow down the data, the rate in which the packets are being delivered to the destination, right? The next hop. So that is what its job. So that means mainly what you should remember is your LLC sublayer performs the job of the flow control, error control, and adds certain fields into the frames, right? Which is found by your MAC layer. So the frames that is added by your LLC is the FCS, then the addresses, right? DSAP and SSAP addresses, and some control fields will be added, right? And you look at here, when it goes over there, right? So this is LLC PDU. When it is receiving from the upper layer, the LLC will now add this is the data received from the upper layer. It adds these two. Then it comes to the MAC, right? So the MAC, once again, it is converted into the MAC payload. MAC adds its header, right? So it adds the MAC will add the header over there, so that the MAC header, I'll come to that later what it does. What is that MAC header and what is the job of the MAC? The next what we'll be discussing is the MAC, the media access control. That means what you should remember is why the data link layer is divided into two sublayers. One is the LLC sublayer and the MAC sublayer. It is divided to just to support the different protocols introduced on the Ethernet technology, so that the framing are different for different technology, so that all these particular different frames, they cannot directly communicate with the upper layer. So LLC will do the job, right? It acts as a multiplexer, right? It receives all the frames from the MAC layer and then coordinate them and sending them to the upper layer. And its another job is the flow control and then the error control and adding some few frames so that the packets will be correctly received and delivered to the destinations. Now let us come to the MAC, right? Media access control, as you have seen in this diagram. This is what is the physical layer related to the MAC sublayer. So this MAC defines the specific access methods for each type of a LAN, right? So each type of LAN means it may be the Ethernet, CSMA CD, or token ring, or token bus, depends upon the different types of the topology that is being used in the underlying layers. It defines the access methods, right? How should be the frames, right? What should be the MAC headers, everything that this particular MAC will decide. The physical layer is dependent upon the implementation and type of the physical media used, right? So they use the different physical media. We may, it varies, maybe a twisted ring, maybe a coaxial cable, maybe what we use is the fiber connectivity. All these are the physical layer specifications, right? And IEEE, as you know that, it gives the specifications for each LAN implementation for the each physical media that is being used over here, right? And now let us look at the standard Ethernet, right? What is this protocol, right? And how it behaves and how it is being defined for different types of the standards that is being used in the physical access control media, right? So the Ethernet, which uses normally it is CSMA CD it uses, because normally we'll use the token ring, token bus topology. In those cases, the same channel is shared by the multiple users. So when it is being shared by the multiple users, automatically it has to use CSMA CD protocol, right? That Ethernet should use the Ethernet protocol. Then automatically your header will change, the MAC header will change, but only in the mesh and the star topology, they will have a direct connectivity with the switch. The MAC header will have the little different fields, right? And the standard Ethernet, like when we come to that, the Ethernet protocol, as I said that the standard Ethernet was invented in 1976 by Xerox, Palo Alto Center in California. And then based on the starter generation, the first generation. Now first generation was operating with 10 Mbps speed. And as the technology advanced, right, it went to the next generation. Likewise, all these Ethernet technologies are being released by the Xerox only. And you look at this, it was introduced in 1976, where the OSI reference model was introduced. And since it is so robust, even today, we use the Ethernet protocol only, Ethernet technology for the LAN communication. And it is also now is having a portable features to support that Wi-Fi also, right? And there are 4 generations are there, and these we will be discussing one by one later, right? So the first one was the standard Ethernet, which was introduced in 1976, was of the speed of 10 Mbps speed. They generated it, which they thought that it will support the future, the next 10 to 15 years. But as the technology was advanced, you see the fast Ethernet, which will support much higher speed of 100 Mbps. And then the gigabit Ethernet is little faster, which can support the higher speed, right? Because you see that now, as the technology has advanced, the speed in which the data is transmitted is also increased. So whether it is wireless or whether it is satellite communication or whether it is a LAN communication, we are able to reach higher speeds. So the Ethernet evaluation, this is the first one that was introduced in 1936. So the other next generation is the fast Ethernet, gigabit Ethernet, and 10 gigabit Ethernet. You remember them. The nomenclature, first you remember all the four. This is the first generation, second generation, the third generation, and the fourth generation. And this is with a 10 Mbps speed. Multiply by 10, it will become 100 Mbps, right? Next is 1 Gbps. The multiply by 10, it is 10 Gbps. How you remember this is 10 Mbps is the standard Ethernet, the first one that it introduced. 100 Mbps speed is for the fast Ethernet. Then you know that you got a gigabit speed nowadays, right? So it has to support. So 1 gigabit and the 10 gigabit Ethernet is introduced. That is for your syllabus, but still we have got high speed Ethernets available nowadays also, right? And that is about the Ethernets that was being introduced by the Xerox corporations. I told you that LSE will add certain fields to the MAC frame, but actually the MAC sublayer is the one which now its main job is to framing, right? So in the standard Ethernet, the MAC sublayer governs the operation of the access method, right? So how the data is to be accessed. It also frames the data received from the upper layer and passes them to the physical layer, right? Its main job is as soon as a packet is coming from the upper layer, the LLC does the job of only adding certain fields and passing the packets, right? But the MAC sublayer job is it has to frames. It has to convert them into the frames and send it to the bottom layer, right? So the framing pattern is now is shown here, right? The framing pattern here in this case. Look at this, right? So it is totally 1500 bytes actually. The data that it can, including the data that totally it can go up to 1500 bytes. And some of the fields that is being added over here, right? The frame should contain now the data that is passed by the upper layer. And what is called as a frame and packet is the network layer sends the packets, but these packets length may not be suitably being transmitted by the physical layer. The physical may not have that particular capacity to send the whole packet on the network. So that is now understood by your the MAC sublayers, right? Because that knows what is the capacity of the physical layer. Based on that, it once again subdivides your network packets into the shorter units, right? The shorter units of the data is called as the frame. So it converts them into the frames, and that particular a part of the data which is sent by the network layer. Sometimes the whole network packet can be just converted into a packet, or it can be once again subdivided into frames and sent if the packet is too large. That is what is this data part. And it indicates that what is the length of this particular, the whole packet. Now it indicates the length of the type. And now we see that the job of the MAC layer is route the packet from one hop to another hop. Look at here, the job of the network layer is to route the packet from source to the destination. That's why you remember in the network layer formatting, sometimes back you might have discussed IPv4 protocol and IPv6 protocol. IPv4 is the protocol adopted for IP addressing, right? The network layer now decides the IP addressing of source and the destination. It is a global address, right? But the network layer puts that global addresses and send it to the physical layer. But when it comes to the physical layer job is that the MAC layer job is to depending upon the destination, it should decide the next hop. That means the next, maybe a router or there may be another switch or whatever it is, the next node. It has to deliver the packet to the next node, immediate neighbor, right? So that is his job. That means the job of the MAC layer is not routing to the packet to the destination. His job is to route the packet to the next hop on the way to the destination, right? On the way to the destination, and your MAC operates with Ethernet. Ethernet is, it is a connectivity. You remember that the Ethernet connector in our labs, the LAN connector, right? You will have a cable, and the cable, it will be inserted in the NIC card. NIC card has got a Ethernet connectivity. We insert it, and the other end will go to the switch or to the router, right? So the job of this MAC layer is to route the packet to that particular next node. So the next node means automatically it should be the Ethernet address. Ethernet address, that we call it as a MAC address, it is the address of the port, right? The next, where it has to be put into. So that's why now your Ethernet address has become now 6-byte address. Remember, the network address was 32-bit address. Now maintaining that network address, that is embedded here, right? So maintaining the network address as it is, now its job is to add these elements into the packet, right? You can ask me that where that particular network IP addresses has gone. That is here, right? So certain the destination address introduced by the network layer is here, but this particular packet should move to the next hop, right? Where it should go on the Ethernet. So that's why the MAC addresses are being added here. The source address, from which node it is coming and to which node it has to go, that is the next port address. And since it is called as a physical address, it is totally 48-bit address, 6 bytes, right? 6 into 8, it has become a 48-bit. So the job of the MAC layer is take that payload, adds that the length of the type of this particular total packet that it is sending, and then the CRC it will add. Then it will add the source address, that the Ethernet address or the physical address, and the destination address to which next hop it has to go. And then it will add these two fields, which is mainly used for the synchronization, right? It will add a preamble. Preamble, you see that it is 7 bytes long, and then SFD, start frame delimiter, it is 1 byte, right? And look at here, preamble is 56 bits long. It is alternating ones and zeros. Now it is a simple dummy data. 1 0 1 0 1 0 will come, and after that 7 bytes, one more byte is added. It is also alternating ones and zeros, but the last two will be 1 1, right? I will tell you why this particular format is there. It is something like that. We have told you already 12 o'clock the class starts, right? But I log in at 12 o'clock, but so most of the students are logging in at 12:05, 12:06 and all, right? So you are taking some time. I am waiting for that. That means this is the preamble I have introduced to wait for you. Similarly here also, when the packet is now routed from one hop to another hop, the receiver should know, the data packet is coming, or some junk is coming, or whatever it is coming, it should know, right? So that's why this preamble, they come first, preambles will come. When the receiver start receiving this preamble as alternating ones and zeros, it has to get ready, right? So this is an information for the receiver to get ready. Some data is coming, right? And it has to synchronize itself, right? The speed, data rate, the packet, everything, it has to get ready, right? So it starts reading one by one, and by this particular preamble arrives, the receiver get ready, right? That's why the preamble bit 7 byte long preamble. That means sufficient time is given by the sender to the receiver to get ready to receive this particular whole data properly without any missing of any bits, right? And this is the SFT is called as, it makes that particular receiver to be synchronized, right? It is called as, you can say that it is a one that awakens your receiver, right? So 1010 will come, last 11 will come. That last 11 indicates that to the receiver that your next data that is coming from here onwards is very, very important, because they are the one which contains the valid informations, right? So it should get ready as soon as after preamble and SFT bits 11 starts, means it is an indication to the receiver that the next important information is very, very important. It should not miss out. By this particular time, it should synchronize itself. That is what is informed by this MAC layer sent by the sender, right? So you understood now the MAC layer job is to convert the data received from the upper layer into the smaller units called as the frames, and the frames will be added by the MAC sub layer the additional fields called as the length or the type. It is 2 bytes. What is the total length of this? Then the source address and the destination address. And remember, the source address and the destination addresses here are not 32-bit. It is the 48-bit physical addresses, or we call them as MAC addresses, which identifies the Ethernet address of the receiver, right? This is the Ethernet address of the receiver to which receiver should receive this particular packet. You remember that now in the token bus and the token ring, this packet will be traveling in the ring. Who should receive, right? Suppose the packet released by the source has to go to the last receiver in the particular token ring, right? So the first one should not receive it. As soon as first one receives this, it will identify the destination address, and it understands that it is not its address. It will not touch that packet. It will go on. Only the destined node will receive it. And based on the destination address that is embedded here in the IP, it will once again convert that particular into a new frame, and then adds the destination address, and then send it to the next hop. That's how the packet keeps on traveling until it reaches the destination node where it has to reach. Correct? So that is what is explained here. So the destination address is 6 byte here. It is called as a physical address, which is 48-bit. And the length type, right, defines upper layer protocol. What is the total length of the packet it has got, right? And look at here. So Ethernet normally will impose the restrictions on the minimum and the maximum length of the frame, right? So the payload should be 1500 bytes, and these are the additional things that is added by the frame, right? So the minimum frame length can be 512 bits or 64 bytes. That depends, right, on the physical layer capability, right? So the minimum is limited to 512 bits. The maximum can go up to 1518 bytes. That is the maximum, right? The frame length that it can send. And what is that physical? I told you now the MAC sublayer job is to convert that IP address of 16-bit into the Ethernet address and route it to the next destination hop. And I told you that it will be 48-bit long. All the Ethernet addresses are the 48-bit long, right? And each station on the Ethernet network, such as either PC or a workstation or a printer, has its own network interface card, because the frame should be received by them, right? So it is the network address, the Ethernet address. The Ethernet address is always 48-bit. That is what we call it as a port address actually, right? And this port address format is shown here. It is always represented in hexadecimal, and the delimitation between one byte to the other byte is a colon, right? You remember what was IP address? IP address is 32-bit long. Here it is 48-bit long. the IP address was represented by a decimal notation, right? And that also the delimitation was bytes only, but each byte was represented in decimal notation and it was separated by a dot, but here it is separated by colon, right? Very important. Now you are coming to know what is the IP address, what is Ethernet address, right? Ethernet address is basically the physical address, right? To which port the packet should go. And that is the Ethernet address is decided by your MAC sublayer, right? You have to remember that. Now when the packet is moving in the MAC sublayer, the three types of addresses capabilities will be incorporated into the header, right? So how it should identify that who is the receiver and who should receive the packet is by these addresses. Now there are three types of addresses that will be used by the layers here. One is called as a unicast, multicast, and broadcast, right? The source address is always a unicast, right? The frames come from only one destination, one station, but the destinations can be either unicast, multicast. Means when a source releases a packet, it puts its source address. That is always unicast. Only one source is going to deliver the packet. But when it delivers the packet, it may be intended for all, or it may be intended for few, or it may be intended for only one distinct destination, right? That's why the destination addresses are of three types: unicast, multicast, and broadcast. Now let us see here in the address, the 6 bytes address, that frame address, the MAC sublayer address, this particular bit, that means the uppermost bytes, this bit will indicate whether the packet is a unicast packet or a multicast packet. So what is unicast? The destination is only one recipient. Means you remember that if the packet is released in a token ring, many nodes are connected to it, right? So when the packet is moving, it passes through different nodes, right? Each node can sense that particular packet is coming in the ring. What they do is, the MAC layer in that particular node, when it receives the packet, it will check this bit. It doesn't check any other bit, right? It will check this bit. If this bit is unicast, then it will check the remaining bit, which source address it has got, which destination address is got. If the destination address is for that particular node, it will take that frame. Otherwise, it is not for that, it will release it, right? And that is what is this unicast indicates. Unicast means the packet is sent by the source to only one recipient. The second one is the packet may be sent by the source to the selected group, right? Selected group. That means in that group, all can receive it, right? So the destination address defines a group of addresses, and in that particular group, all can receive it, right? That is what is in multicast. If this bit is 1, right, then that particular node first will check this destination address, and if the destination address belongs to that group which is intended by the source, then all the nodes in that particular group will receive the packet. Others will not receive, right? That means this we call it as one-to-many. The first one is one-to-one. The second one is one-to-many. One-to-many means it is not all. Many means only the intended groups can receive it, right? And in that group, all nodes can receive it. And the other destination address is broadcast. Broadcast is nothing but the recipients are all the stations on the LAN. Recipients are all the stations on the LAN means on the LAN, either we can have the token bus or token ring or whatever may be the type of the connectivity, Ethernet connectivity that we got. So all the nodes will receive that particular packet, right? So they test this particular byte. In that particular byte, the information is there that it is a broadcast packet. How to identify the broadcast packet? The broadcast packet is identified by that all bits will be ones. Look at here, all the bits will be ones. So in this destination address, totally in the 48-bit address, if all the bits are ones, then automatically it is understood by all the recipients in that particular LAN that this packet is for them. They immediately receive the packet, stores it, right? And based on that, so where we use the broadcast will be used whenever a router sends certain important information to all the nodes that are connected to that particular router, right? So maybe the route mapping table or whatever it is, that will be always the broadcast packets, right? And the access method, as I told you, right? The Ethernet access method is basically CSMA CD access method, because as I told you that Ethernet normally will be, the cable will be shared by the multiple users. So it has to use CSMA CD, right? So only the packet, when one releases the packet, others should not release the packet. They should keep on checking or sensing the channel unless until it is becoming free. No? That is called as the CSMA CD topology, and is here. So the slot time, what should be the slot time for the packet here? The Ethernet network introduced the slot time. What is the slot time? It is the round trip time required for a frame to travel from one end of the maximum length of the network onto the other, right? Means normally the slot time is decided by the round trip time taken by a bit if it is released from the source to the last node. That's what you say. No, it takes into control the maximum length of the network, right? Not the next hop. It takes into control the last. If there is you think over, if there is a token ring, you will have 10 nodes. The last nodes time should be taken. How much time is taken for the packet to reach the last node, right? So it will take that particular time and takes as a slot time, right? So slot time is given by, and apart from that, you have seen in CSMD, I saw, if there is a collision, then the collision information should come back also, so that also will be taken care, right? So it immediately it will sense the collision. After it sends the collision, it will send the jamming signal, so that others should not try to catch hold of the link. So others should not send the data, only it can take control over the channel. So that will be the slot time. The slot time in the Ethernet is now equal to the round trip time, right? What is round trip time? Round trip time is the time required for the frame to travel to the last end node which is there in the network, plus the time required to send the jam signal. Time required to send the jam signals in the sense, it is the time required for understanding that there is a collision occurred. After that, it introduces a jam signal. The total time is taken care here. That will be the slot time, right? And normally, when we say time is always defined in seconds. But here, in the Ethernet, the slot time is always defined in bits. Then you can ask me that, how come the bits indicates the time, right? See, the bits, why it indicates, why it give the bits, there are different types of Ethernets. Some Ethernets will have 10 Mbps speed, some Ethernets will have 1 gigabit speed. So it is automatically understood because this particular bit is universal. Based on the type of the Ethernet, automatically the slot time will be decided. For example, if it is a 10 Mbps Ethernet, then automatically, what is the time taken by 1 bit? So time taken by 1 bit will become now 0.1 microsecond, right? 0.1 microsecond multiplied by this will become now the slot time for 10 Mbps Ethernet, right? Suppose you take that it is 1 Mbps Ethernet. Suppose that is not there. If there is a 10 Mbps Ethernet, the time taken by one bit is 1 microsecond. Totally, in that particular case, it is 512 bits slot time. That means you understand that this slot time is always defined in bits because it becomes a universal slot time. Based on the type of the Ethernet, automatically that Ethernet understand that what should be the slot time, right? If it is 100 Mbps, then the slot time will become now 5.12 microsecond, right? So the slot time and the collision, the choice of 512-bit slot time always is chosen for the functioning of CSMA CD, right? And the slot time and the maximum network length. So there is a relationship between the slot time and the maximum length, as I told you, right? So slot time is always calculated with respect to the maximum network length. So slot time and the maximum network length is always related to each other, right? And also the third one, it also depends upon the propagation time, you know, right? Propagation time means what type of Ethernet that you are using, and the sender is sending the data at what speed, right? They are all interrelated. So slot time is dependent upon the maximum network length and then the propagation speed of the signal in a particular medium, right? And that's what is now shown here. The maximum length is calculated by the propagation speed multiplied by slot time divided by 2, right? So that's how it is arrived at. Now let us come to the physical layer. As I told you, there are different 4 generations of the Ethernets introduced by the Xerox, right? And then based on that, this particular standard Ethernet has got different, it proposes a different connectors, right? The standard Ethernet proposes the different connectors. And these connectors are, as already you know that, the first one that was introduced is coaxial cable. Initially, they were using the twisted wire cable. But when we started using this for the data connection, when your PCs came into existence, the huge data is being generated and it should be sent. So that the coaxial cable becomes the more popular, right? They dropped out the twisted wire cables. They went for a coaxial cable. The advantage of the coaxial cable is the noise will be less in this particular case, right? And the speed in which the data is transmitted is also indicated here, right? So this 10 base 5 is a connector that we use. It is called as a thick coaxial, right? It is a thick coaxial cable we used over here. And what is this 10 base 5? Why we use those numbers? I'll tell you later, right? And then there is another cable that will be used in the physical medium. It is called as the thin bus, thin coaxial bus. Now it uses the technology 10 base 2. Then for star, we have got a 10 base T, right? And then 10 base F. This F indicates it uses the fiber technology, right? So let us see that what is that 10 indicates, right, in this case. And since we are now discussing all these particular physical layers with respect to that standard Ethernet is working under 10 Mbps speed, right? The standard Ethernet is 10 Mbps. It is a 10 Mbps Ethernet. That's why this 10 is used all over here in all these physical layer protocols, right? So 10 is 10 Mbps, right? 10 Mbps. And what is that 5? Let's see here. And how the encoding and decoding will be done is at the sender, the data are converted to digital signal using the Manchester scheme, right? You look at here, you studied the different schemes in the chapter 2, right? Here it uses the Manchester scheme, the Ethernet uses the Manchester scheme, and at the receiver, the received signal is interpreted as Manchester and decoded. It will convert it back to the data, right? So that means now when the data coming from the upper layer, which is a digital signal, ones and zeros, using the Manchester scheme, it is converted into the signals, right? Because it has to be transmitted at the sending end. At the receiving end, it should be retransmitted, right? So it will be retransmitted here into the 10 Mbps data. So 10 Mbps data will come from the upper layer, right? The Ethernet. It is converted to the Manchester coding, then releases it into the physical layer as in the form of a signal. And then when the signals comes over here, it will take it. The Manchester decoder will convert it into bits and then present it to the upper layer, right? So for encoding and decoding, you remember here, the standard Ethernet uses the Manchester scheme, right? Now let us see what is the 10 base 5. I told you, the thick Ethernet is called as a 10 base 5. 10 indicates it is the 10 Mbps speed, right? And the base, in the case indicating that it uses the baseband digital signal, right? You have studied what is baseband digital signal. And then this last one, 5, indicates what will be the cable length, right? What will be the cable length? 5 is 500 meters. So the basic cable that will be used in this particular Ethernet connection is a thick coaxial cable, and it is a bus, right? It is of the length 500 meters, and from the tapping, each node can be connected, right? And then here also there is a standard defined here. This particular cable cannot be as long as you like, right? You have seen, whenever you want to you want to have the computer to be moved to further long. Even I tried my computer to be moved to a far off distance. With a single cable, I cannot do it, right? I need to have, once again, a switch over there. From that switch, I have to now extend the distance. So here, the maximum cable length, when you want to take it from a bus, it is only 550 meters cable you should use, the transfer receiver cable, right? It is limited, and your bus length is limited to 500 meters, right? It is a thick coaxial cable, right? And it is explained here. It uses a bus topology with external receiver, right? So the nodes will be there for receiving, detecting, and everything. The maximum length of each segment should be 500 meters. And when any node wants to tap out, the cable length has to be only 50 meters. Then let us come to the thin Ethernet, right? And this particular Ethernet is the standard connectivity is called as a thin Ethernet, and it uses here the bus topology, right, with thin and more flexible cable. So this is not a flexible cable, right? So, but this is a flexible cable. You see that it is shown that it can be moved. It can take a turn. Here, if it takes a turn, there will be a loss of data, right? Here, it can take a turn. There will be no loss of data, right? The precautions have been taken while designing them. And then here also you see that what is 10 base 2? 10 indicates that it is the 10 standard Ethernet, 10 Mbps speed. It also is the baseband digital transmission. And 2 indicates the cable here, the Ethernet cable, right, should be, the base cable should be 185 meters long. Since we cannot, only one digit is left over here and we cannot write that 185, they are represented as 2, right, rounded up to 2, right? So 185 meters should be the length of this. And once again, when you want to tap out and do the connection, the length should be limited to 50 meters only, right? Not beyond this. So the thin coaxial cable, and what you remember here between the difference between thick coaxial cable and thin coaxial cable is this can be bent and the thick coaxial cable cannot take bend. If you try to bend it, the data loss will be there. Now let us move on to the third type, that is called as a 10 base T, right? It is a twisted pair Ethernet, right? Twisted pair Ethernet looks like this. And what is this 10 base T indicates it? As you know that it is a standard Ethernet. It is also uses the baseband digital transmission. T indicates that it is a twisted pair, right? And it has got a hub here. And then from the hub, equivalent to the star topology, from the hub it can take the data. Then the only difference between these two connectivity, because these two uses the star connectivity, the hub will be there. From the hub we can connect everything, right? Here they are connected to the cables in the first two Ethernet standards. We will have here the cables, but here we have got star, right? You can tap out. But these connectors here, it is a twisted wire pair. Here it is a fiber cable. That's only the difference here. The fiber can take the maximum speed. Propagation speed will be much higher. The bandwidth is much higher in the case of the fiber technology. Okay, so we have studied the four different types of physical layer connectivities, right? Which is used in the standard Ethernet, right? 10 base 5, 10 base 2, 10 base T, and 10 base F. Fine. Now I will be moving to the changes. Little small changes will be made in the Ethernet, right? Standard Ethernet. What changes, right? Changes will actually is used to raise the bandwidth, right? Why the change in the Ethernet is being done is, suppose in your environment, you are using 10 base 5 Ethernet system, but more number of nodes are connected, then the 10 base 5 will have some disadvantage of slogging, right? The data is running very slow, there will be a delay. You have to increase. But if you want to increase, you have to change the whole connectivity. You have to move to the next Ethernet, right? 100 Mbps Ethernet. If it is not possible, in the standard Ethernet only, we can make some changes, right? It was proposed. And then it will reduce the collision, right? Because when you add more number of nodes, then automatically there is a chance that there may be a collision, right? And the slot time also increases because the maximum length of the network increases. To avoid two shortcomings of the Ethernet, one is the speed slow down if you add more number of nodes, and the network increases if you are observing a delay, then you have to increase. But if you want to increase, you cannot move to 100 Mbps, right? You have to manage with 10 Mbps. How to do it? The two things are proposed here, called as a bridge Ethernet. In the bridge Ethernet, what it does is it will raise the bandwidth, means it remains as 10 Mbps, but the nodes will get the data with higher speed, and the collision is reduced. How? Let us see here. One such bridge is shown here. Now we see here, there are more number of nodes on the bus. Automatically, the length is more. If the length becomes more, the slot time increases. When the slot time increases, then the nodes cannot wait, because it takes a long time for the one particular node to send the data to the other, right? So slot time becomes longer, and then the collisions are very high because more number of nodes. How to reduce it? Split this, put a bridge. Now what will happen now? This becomes a separate bus, this becomes a separate bus, right? But when it is now divided into bus, but its speed remains same, it remains as a 10 Mbps. Now this 10 Mbps bandwidth is divided by now only among 6 nodes. Previously it was divided among 12 nodes, now it is divided among 6. Bandwidth naturally increases, right? The speed increases, the data pooling increases, that is the advantage. And the slot time reduces, right? Slot time also reduces. So collision time will be reduced, that is the advantage. right? So raising the bandwidth. In an unbridged Ethernet network, the total capacity is 10 Mbps shared among many users. Now, if you introduce a bridge, it gets shared among only those nodes which are connected to a part of the bridge network, right? That is what is the advantage of the bridging here in the standard Ethernet, right? So we are not increasing the speed, right? We are not moving on to the higher Ethernet. We are remaining the same Ethernet, so there is a less cost for the agency, right? So, but still we are receiving the reduction in the collision as well as the speed is being increased. That's what you see here. In a network with a heavy load, each station theoretically has to divide this 10 Mbps. Previously it was 10 by 12. Now it will become 10 by 6. That is the advantage of the bridge. And separating the collision domain, right? The collision domain now is only among these, right? Suppose if you introduce one more bit, if you want to have higher speed, put one more bridge here, right? Then once again, the collision is reduced. The bandwidth is increased. That is the advantage, right? See that still we can do adding a particular connector in the node bridge. No, as I told you, instead of putting one more bridge here, it is a hardware cost. Use the bridge which has got two ports at either ends. Then automatically you will have the domains are divided here. This will become one domain, this will become another domain. So this 10 Mbps is shared by only 3 now. It will become now the bandwidth will become now 10 by 3. That is the advantage, right? So the next we have got switched Ethernet. So switched Ethernet is very simple. The idea of the bridge network can be extended to switch. That's all. That was a bus here. It's a switch here. So using the switch, we will have a domain. Now it is known that this will become a domain. Now the speed is much increased, right? It increases very fast. So in other words, we can have a multiple port bridge and it has n ports. In this way, the bridge is shared only between the stations, right? This is sending the data to here. So what is the speed of this Ethernet? 10 Mbps. Now they are sharing. Only two are there, right, in this network. So 5 Mbps each. That is the advantage of switch Ethernet. Then full duplex, I'll complete it here. Now this will be the last discussion I'll be doing here. Okay, the fast Ethernet is the next one. So it is of higher different level. So full duplex, right? So we will have a full duplex means we will have previously what you have seen is this is a connectivity which is it may be a semi duplex or simplex, but here in this case it added much higher speed using a duplex mode, right? So simultaneously transmit and receive can happen here in this case. So that is what is the full duplex Ethernet. Now I'll see that its advantage. So the one that we have got a duplex mode over here, right? So instead of using only one link, now we will have two links will be used, one for transmission and for the other one. So what will happen now? It remains to be 10 Mbps, right? There is one advantage, and the other advantage is the next step in the evaluation was to move from the switch Ethernet to the full duplex switch Ethernet, right? The full duplex mode increases the capacity of each domain 10 to 20 Mbps because each one is 10 Mbps. So totally it can transmit at 10 Mbps, receive at 10 Mbps, right? So it will become 20 Mbps speed. That is the advantage, right? Full duplex advantage is you're using a standard Ethernet which is of 10 Mbps, but you are multiplying it by 2, it is becoming 20 Mbps by using two links, one for sending, one for receiving. Okay, so I'll stop at this stage. Sir,